Ex-wife abandoned us 6 years ago. Now she showed up at my door, crying and begging to be in our daughter's life again. I almost fell for it until her sister told me the cruel truth. So, a little background before I get into what has turned my life upside down. I, 32 have been a single dad to my daughter, 16F, for the past 6 years. She is the light of my life, and I love her more than anything. I've been raising her by myself since her mother, my ex-wife, 31F, abandoned us when my little girl was 2 years old. She ran off with some guy, her current husband, 40M, and never looked back. She didn't even say goodbye to our daughter or me. She just left a note saying that she was sorry, but she had found her true love and she wanted to start a new life with him. She said she didn't want to be a mother or a wife anymore and that she never signed up for it. For context, my daughter was the result of an unplanned pregnancy. My wife and I were in a casual relationship but decided to get married for the sake of our daughter. However, I have never once regretted my daughter's birth, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I tried my best to be a good husband to my wife, but I guess it just didn't work out for her. In the note she left, she said she hoped we would be happy without her and that I'm a great father and she knew I would take care of our daughter. The note also said that I could be as honest as I wanted with our daughter about what happened to her mommy once she was old enough to understand. Along with the note, there were divorce papers with her signatures already on them. She has asked for no alimony or any part of our marital assets and demanded no rights over our daughter. I was devastated and heartbroken. I couldn't believe that she would do something like that. We had been married for 10 years and we had been happy, or so I thought. We had met in college, and even though we were dating casually, it was sweet and fun. We had gotten married soon after we found out about the pregnancy, and I was overjoyed when my daughter was born. She was the most beautiful baby, and I thought we were both happy with how things turned out. We had a good life. We had a nice house. We had good jobs, and we had a loving family. We had everything anyone could ever want, or so I thought. Sure. I mean, we had problems like every couple does, but I did my best to do right by my family. After my wife left, I tried to contact her for months, but she had changed her number and blocked me on social media. I tried to find her, but she had moved to another state with her new lover. I tried to get some answers through my in-laws, but apparently she had cut off all communication with them. So it was not just me and our daughter. I tried to get some closure, but she had left me with nothing but pain and confusion. The man she ran away was someone she met at her gym. I found out who he was and tried to get in touch with someone from his family, but he lived alone and his neighbors didn't know much about him. I somehow found out where he worked, but they told me that he quit a few weeks ago, so right around the time the two of them eloped. Eventually, I just decided to quit searching for nothing. It's not like I wanted her back in my life. I was angry and hurt, but I had to move on for the sake of our daughter. She was too young to understand what had happened, but she was smart enough to notice that her mommy was gone. She asked me where she was and when she would come back. She cried and begged me to bring her back. She said she missed her and loved her. I hope no parent ever has to go through the pain of seeing their child in that state. It broke my heart to see her like that. I didn't know what to tell her. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to hurt her either. I decided to tell her the truth, but in a way that she could understand. I told her that Mommy had gone away because she was unhappy, and she wanted to be happy. I told her that Mommy had found a new friend who made her happy, and she wanted to be with him. I told her that Mommy still loved her, but she couldn't be with her right now. I told her that Daddy loved her very much, and he would always be with her. I told her that we would be okay, just the two of us. She didn't seem to accept it at first. She still asked me about her Mommy every day. She still cried and clung to me every night. School was very hard because she would see other kids with her moms, and you know how kids are. We live in a small town, and news of my wife leaving spread like wildfire. Some kids must have heard their parents talk about it, and my daughter had to hear all sorts of unnecessary comments. I was forced to move to a new neighborhood and put her in a new school to protect her. It took a long time, but she eventually started to heal. She gradually stopped asking me about her mommy. She slowly stopped crying and demanded to sleep in my bed with me. She began to accept that her mommy was gone and she wasn't coming back. It took a lot of effort, but I think she realized that she hadn't done anything wrong and it wasn't her fault. She understood that she wasn't abandoned and unloved. We never speak about her mom anymore either, and I've been feeling good about moving on from that chapter in our lives. Recently, she has even started telling me to get a girlfriend and makes jokes about how I'm eternally single. I am so proud of her and how strong she has been. I worked hard to give her a good home and a good education. I have always supported her interests and encouraged her talents. I was scared of her being disappointed again, so since her mom left 6 years ago, I have never dated or even thought of it. I miss companionship sometimes, but my daughter's needs are more important than mine. And I don't even plan on dating anyone till she's much older. We have a good life. Even though it's just the two of us, it never feels like we're missing anything. I have the support of my family. Two, and my daughter is absolutely adored and spoiled by her pops, grandma, and uncles. So, here's where things went wrong. Last week, my ex-Mill, 55F, let's call her Judith, showed up at my place unannounced and uninvited. She had never been a part of our lives since her daughter left us. Even when I was still married, Judith could barely hide her contempt towards me because she thought that I wasn't good enough to be a part of their family because I didn't come from money, and had a blue-collar job. She had never called or visited or sent a card or a gift on my daughters' birthdays. She had never shown any interest or concern for her granddaughter. She had never apologized, explained, or taken any responsibility for her daughter's actions. She had never done anything for us, but she had the audacity to show up at my door and act like I owed her some sort of huge debt. Honestly, I did not even recognize her when I saw her because it had been such a long time. She had to introduce herself for me to finally register who she was. I was extremely confused and asked her what she was doing at my house. She gave me a look like I said something ridiculous and told me that, naturally, she was here to meet her granddaughter and rescue her from the dump I had been raising her in. Before I could even say anything, she told me that she found out that my daughter is in a public school and that it was unacceptable for any child in her family to have such low standards for their education. She said that her daughter, meaning my ex-wife, had moved back into the family home with her new husband and met to complete their family and do what is best for everyone. She needed her granddaughter to come back to them. I was shocked and angry. For a second, I actually thought she was joking. What did she mean by a dump and all that garbage about a real family when the only family my daughter has known has been me and my family? Did this woman really think that she and her deadbeat daughter and some random guy would raise my daughter better than I can? I couldn't believe that she could say something like that. I mean, I know I'm not raising my daughter in luxury with an accountant's paycheck, but she is in no way deprived of anything. She goes to a good school, and I'm very attentive to her education. Sure, I would love to send her to the best schools in the country, but she is bright, and I know she will do well as long as she has the support of me and qualified teachers. I told my Mill that she had no right to see her, and she had no right to take her. I told her that she was not her family, and she didn't belong with her, and the only grandmother my daughter has is my mother and no one else. I threatened to call the police on her for trespassing when she finally revealed her true colors. She said that if I refused to cooperate, she had enough money to hire the best lawyers in the country and would take me to court if I didn't agree with what she was saying. I scoffed at that and asked on what grounds, and she said that she would put up a false case of abuse against me and say that I forced my ex-wife to abandon our daughter and run away in order to save her own life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her allegations are, of course, completely false, but at that moment I could see my whole life being destroyed. She threatened to pay off false witnesses and gather evidence that I was abusive to my ex-wife. I knew that she was capable of doing that. My ex-wife's family has been in law enforcement for generations, both my late Phil and my ex's. Grandpa were police officers. I knew they had connections and could potentially ruin my life. I didn't know what to do. I begged her not to do this. I told her that her granddaughter was happy and healthy with me. I told her that we could talk to my daughter and ask her if she wanted to get to know her grandma, and if she did, I had no problem letting them see each other. But Judith wouldn't listen to anything I said. She told me that I had a week to get back to her, or I would be hearing from her lawyer. I was still processing all this when she went ahead and did something even crazier than I could have expected. She offered me money to let her take my daughter. She said that if I didn't want all the unpleasant and expensive court procedures and lawyers, we could deal with this matter more simply. When I asked her what she meant, she offered me $500,000 and said that if I took the money and walked away, no one would get hurt and I would never have to work again in my life. When I got angry and refused her ridiculous offer, her tone completely changed. She said that she tried to be peaceful, but if I wanted to do things the difficult way, she was more than happy to accommodate me. I've been a wreck ever since. I didn't know where to ask for help. I thought of getting a lawyer, of course, but I wondered what good that would do. If they were claiming to plant false evidence against me, I was scared about the future because I know what kind of a woman she is, and also, courts are never kind to single fathers. I did not want to lose my daughter. She is everything I have, but I am not rich enough to hire the best lawyers for my case, so things are not looking good. I'm not sure what to do. My daughter obviously didn't know anything about any of this, and I could not decide if I should even tell her. I don't think she even remembers her grandmother. I know the thought of going to live with her is impossible. But the fact remains that she is a minor and can be taken away from me against both of our wishes. So I came up with a plan that I knew was risky, but it was the only thing I thought I could do, given the circumstances. After a week of living in total agony, I called my mill saying that I would not be willing to fight a false case against me in the courts, and I have no interest in taking money from her because my daughter is not an object that I would simply exchange for money. I told her that my daughter had no interest in meeting her mother. This was the truth. I had spoken to her about it, and she made it clear that the only person she was interested in staying with was me. Judith's reaction was well as expected. She told me that as a child my daughter doesn't know what's in her best interest, but I should know better as a father. I told her that I knew exactly what was best for my daughter and didn't need her opinion on it. She said that she'll be at my doorstep tomorrow, and I'll have to either let her take my daughter with her or face the consequences. I proceeded to hang up on her. I already knew what to do. The next day she did indeed show up at my door, but I wasn't there. I was at my neighbor's place next door. My daughter opened the door for Judith, and sure enough, after some time I saw Judith's car drive away. I didn't know if my daughter left in it, but I prayed that things would go how I planned them to be and nothing would go wrong. It was around 11 in the morning when Judith left with my daughter. And from the moment they left, I waited for a call I knew I would get eventually. It was an extremely stressful hour, but sure enough, just after 12, I got a call from a lady who said she was from CPS. She asked if I knew where my daughter was. I said that I was not home, and as far as I knew, my daughter should be at home. The lady told me that she had received a call from my daughter, saying she was being kept at her grandmother's house against her wishes and wanted to check if I was aware of this. I said that I had been having some disagreements with my ex-mill, but never consented to my daughter going anywhere with her. I was then asked to visit a precinct where they had my daughter. I went there, and it was a whole mess. My daughter was there and ran to me. It's too complicated to get into, but well, after talking to everyone involved, my daughter, me, my mill, my ex-wife, and her husband, it was clear that there was no instance of child abuse, and this was a family matter. We were given a warning that if we caused my daughter any further mental or physical distress, there would be action against us, and that there may be welfare checks in my home. I tried to be as cooperative as possible and ensured that I wanted nothing more than my child's safety and well-being. My daughter was questioned by CPS officials, and though I don't know exactly what they talked about, my daughter told me that she said she was happy living with me and that her grandmother and mom were strangers to her, and she did not want to live with them. She was allowed to come back home with me, and I was, of course, extremely relieved. I met my ex-wife and her new husband at the precinct, though. We didn't really talk. I only spoke to my mill, and it was far from a friendly conversation. She told me that she knew I must have set up this whole thing and made my daughter call the cops, and that she wouldn't let it slide. She said that I had jeopardized everything and taken things too far, and that there would be consequences for my actions. I told her that I had no idea what she was talking about, that she should not have taken away my daughter without my permission, and I had no role in what happened after that. I left with my daughter. And although I was grateful to have her with me, I was also scared of what those people may do in the future to take my daughter away from me again. After this, I don't think she will pull the whole charade of creating a false case against me, because it will be pretty clear that they are just trying to get control over my daughter, but you never really know. My ex-wife did catch hold of me before I left, though, and she said that I am being a terrible person and that my daughter needs to know a mother and grandmother's life, and I am depriving them of it. I initially did not want to exchange a single word with her, but lost my temper. I told her that she was no mother and had no right to say anything. She said that she is a better person now and just wanted to be there for our daughter. I left before she could manipulate me any further. Ever since then, I've been overthinking about what she said. Am I really being a bad father here? Ida for not letting my daughter have a relationship with her grandmother and mom. Update 1. Hey everyone, I've been trying my best to go through all your comments and texts about my post. There are some things I simply can't answer, because I don't want anyone from my ex-wife's family to come across this post and then get me in trouble. The whole reason I am even posting on Reddit is because I know I can be as anonymous as I want, so I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that Judith has not caused any new trouble for me. I'm still on edge, expecting something to happen, but so far so good. Now for the bad news. Just a couple of days after the big incident, I was at home making dinner when I heard the doorbell. I checked the time, and it was too early for my daughter to be back from soccer practice. Figuring it was probably a delivery or maybe a neighbor dropping by, I casually made my way to answer it. But what I found on the other side was anything but casual. Standing before me, with teary eyes, was my ex-wife. I wish I was joking. My ex-wife, the one person I never expected to see at my doorstep ever again. To say I was shocked would be the understatement of the century. I couldn't believe she was there. In the house where we lived together after our marriage, where he brought my daughter home from the hospital. The same house where she left us all those years ago. For a moment, I was transported back to when my daughter was a baby, the time when we were still together. I am trying desperately to save our marriage and are getting colder and distant every day. Honestly, I didn't even know it was possible to go through so many emotions at once, and in such a short time. It was crazy, but the emotion that emerged as the strongest out of all. My confusion was anger. I was beyond angry at her. I had never gotten any closure for all these years, and here she was standing in front of me. I thought of how messy things would be if my daughter was home and if she had opened the door instead of me, and that just made me angrier. I asked her what she was doing there, and if this was another attempt at taking my daughter away, she should go away before I call the cops on her. I had barely finished my sentence, and she just started crying. I'm talking about a seemingly endless stream of tears rolling down her face, runny nose, choking up, and all that. Before I could even gather my wits about me and even say anything, she launched into an emotional tirade, begging me to hear her out at least once. I was extremely uncomfortable. I didn't want her in my house, but didn't feel great about the idea of a sobbing woman at my door for the whole neighborhood to watch. I thought I might regret it, but I asked her to come in. We sat down in the living room, and she just started pouring her heart out about why she was there. Her sudden appearance wasn't just a coincidence, to no one's surprise. She's tearing up, telling me about all the moments she missed with our daughter, the sleepless nights spent regretting her choices, the whole 9 yards. I'm just sitting there being extremely confused. Why now? After all these years, She said that she had been having a difficult time in her life, which made her rethink her past and made her realize her mistakes. She told me that she and her husband were in debt, and they had lost everything, their jobs, their house, their car. And they had nowhere to go and nothing to eat, which is why she came to Judith for help. She said they had hit rock bottom and realized their mistakes, and they wanted to change their lives and wanted to start with making it up to my daughter. She apologized to me several times and said that she understood what she did was awful, and I didn't have to forgive her, but she would love to get a chance to be in my daughter's life. She said that she would prove herself and be a good mom to my daughter and try to make up for all the lost time. I told her that I needed time to think about it, but couldn't promise her anything. It was time for my daughter to come back from soccer practice too, and I didn't want her to walk into the house and see her mom crying. So I asked her to leave, and she thankfully agreed. I've been up all night thinking about what to do. Obviously, I haven't told my daughter anything about this, but I can't help but wonder if it's time to forgive. I just want to do what's best for my daughter, and I don't want to let my own negative feelings and hurt toward my wife get in the way of that. Maybe a co-parenting situation would not be the worst thing in the world. My opinion on this keeps changing, and I would appreciate any advice on it. Update 2. Some people never change, I guess. Sorry about the late update, guys, but I have been very easy. If you read my last update, you know that I was considering letting my ex be a part of my daughter's life again. I did a lot of soul searching and read comments from many of you guys who said that maybe I should give her another chance. So I thought that maybe I could give it a try. I called her after a few days and told her that I would tell my daughter that she regrets her actions and wants another chance, and only if she agrees I would consider co-parenting. She was obviously overjoyed and thanked me and said that she hoped her daughter would give her another chance. At that point, I was still not entirely happy about the situation and was only doing this to make my daughter happy. I was thinking of the perfect time to tell her all this, but let's just say I'm glad I waited. So turns out that my ex-wife's sudden appearance wasn't just a moment of catharsis and inner remorse as she has tried to portray it. She came to me in desperation because her own mother was dangling her trust fund over her head like some sort of twisted bargaining chip. If my ex-wife doesn't somehow convince me and become a part of our daughter's life, her mom plans to cut her out of the fund entirely, leaving everything to her sister and nephew instead. So some more context about Judith. She really hasn't been very popular with her kids. She comes from a rich family, and after my Phil passed away when my wife was a teenager, Judith got all his money as well. She has always been extremely controlling with both her daughters. My ex-wife has an older sister who literally moved halfway across the country the moment she turned 18 to get away from her control freak mom. She was the same way as a grandmother. My ex-wife's sister Emily, 38F, got married and had a son a few years before my daughter was born. Judith was absolutely insane with them. She used to show up at their house unannounced, questioned Emily's parenting, and basically did all that she could to make their entire family miserable. Emily put up with everything because Judith had a trust fund for Emily's daughter, but made it clear that she would have to be in her life if they wanted that money. She did the same when my daughter was born. But I did not care about the trust fund as much as Emily, and neither did my ex. So when my ex abandoned me and my daughter, I had no desire to continue a relationship with Judith. Her threat of taking away the trust fund didn't mean much to me. I told myself that money was never there to begin with, and I much rather preferred my daughter to have a loving family, instead of a toxic, controlling grandmother just for the sake of some money. When my ex-wife and her new guy lost everything they had due to his debt, they had no other option but to come to Judith for help. She agreed, but had one condition. She wanted her only granddaughter and wanted my ex to either get back with me or convince me to let them take my daughter to be raised by my ex and her husband. Now, my ex is a lot of things, but she isn't stupid. She knew that she would never have a chance at getting back together with me. So when Judith's little intimidation tactic failed, she did the only thing she thought she could do, try to make me feel sorry for her by pretending to have all this remorse about how she had acted in the past. I gotta hand it to her. She was pretty, convincing, but she made one mistake. She got too cocky when I told her I'll consider co-parenting, and bragged to her sister about how she had managed to fool me even after all these years. Emily saw this as a threat. My ex-wife and daughter being in Judith's life obviously means that Emily and her kids won't be the only people in line for the family money. Also, if my ex got back on good terms with her mom, any future kids she had would also be in the line. So Emily did what she thought would be the best way to safeguard her family's money. She reached out to me and told me everything. I feel extremely stupid for falling for this act. I am disgusted at the thought of her using our daughter just as a means of getting money. It's lucky that I found out about this before I told my daughter anything and got her hopes up. I've actually learned my lesson now, though. And in the future, no one from that family will be allowed to come near me or my daughter ever again. Update 3. Some of you have been asking what I did or said to my ex after I found out the truth. Well, this might come as a disappointment, but I did nothing. I am done with this drama and just want to go back to my normal life before Judith made her appearance. I told my ex that I had changed my mind about co-parenting and that my daughter was not interested in getting to know her. Either I've warned her to behave herself and keep Judith in line as well, because if they try to pull any stupid tricks again, I am not afraid to take the legal route anymore. Hopefully, none of their lot will bother me again.